Hey everyone, this is my personality project PowerPoint. And in this PowerPoint, I'll be highlighting three personality theorists and their theories, a personality assessment system, the Myers-Briggs personality test, and three topics centered in the theories that I will recap, and how they apply to a real-world subject. My real-world subject's name is Olivia Glidden. She's an ENFP on the Myers-Briggs personality test and is the perfect test subject for these theories and assessments. So, my first theorist that we're going to be highlighting today is George Kelly. He did his work in the late 1950s, early 1960s, and he was a cognitive theorist. And his main thought was that a person is ultimately responsible for their own development and quality. He was definitely motivated by a sense of dread in the vastness of the universe, and he derived that there was no meaning in the universe except for the meaning that we ascribe to it. In his paper, A Brief Introduction to Personal Construct Theory, George Kelly had this to say: "But wherein does responsibilities lie? Can we ever make facts, even facts that turn out as predicted, responsible for conclusion? I think not. Whatever the world may be, man can come to grips with it only by placing his own interpretations upon what he sees. While his ingenuity in devising suitable constructions may be limited, and many misfortunes therefore come to pass, still is it he, not facts, who holds the ultimate key to the future. This, it seems to me, makes him responsible, and suggests that it is quite inappropriate for him to ever claim that his conclusions have been dictated by any nature other than his own." My next theorist, Carl Rogers, is a humanist, and he believed that humans had one major motive: to become. This process involves self-actualization, the realization of one's full potential. Self-actualization has actually been popularized recently by a lot of humanistic movements that are going on. And it relies on the fact that self is good. And so if self is good, then we should want to desire what we do desire as humans. In his paper, on Becoming a Person, a therapist's view on psychotherapy, Carl Rogers says this: "We can choose to use the behavioral sciences in ways in which free, not control, which will bring about constructive variability, not conformity, which will develop creativity, not contentment, which will facilitate each person in his self-directed process of becoming, which will aid individuals, groups, and even the concept of science to become self-transcending in freshly adaptive ways of meeting life and its problems. It is the urge which is evident in all organic and human life to expand, extend, become autonomous, develop, mature, the tendency to express and activate all the capacities of the organism, to the extent that such activation enhances the organism or the self." This is all a very humanistic way of looking at these ideas of becoming, of maturing, of processing, and we'll take a further look into those later. My third theorist is Abraham Maslow, and he was a humanistic theorist like Rogers, but he believed that humans are intrinsically motivated by positive reinforcement in both their physiology and psychology, and he was the founder of the hierarchy of needs. That's been popularized by a lot of recent thinkers who have developed modifications of the hierarchy of needs, but it's actually in pop culture right now, which I thought was very, very interesting. In his paper, Humanistic Theory of Personality, Abraham Maslow says, "The situation or the field in which the organism reacts must be taken into account, but the field can rarely serve as an exclusive explanation for behavior. Furthermore, the field itself must be interpreted in terms of the organism. Field theory cannot be a substitute for motivation theory. Motivation theory is not synonymous with behavioral theory. The motivations are only one class of determinants of behavior. While behavior is almost always motivated, it is almost always biologically, culturally, and situationally determined as well. The integrated wholeness of the organism must be one of the foundation stones of motivation theory. Abraham Maslow was in love with his motivation theory. Okay, so now I'm going to highlight the personality type assessment that I use. It's the Myers-Briggs 16 Personalities Assessment. I chose this personality assessment because of its ease of use and success and accuracy in my past experiences, as well as experiences of others. My subject, Olivia Glidden, is an ENFJ, which is subtitled The Protagonist. And E, N, F, and J stand for extroverted, intuitive, feeling, and judging. Now, this is a little bit about the Myers-Briggs 16 Personalities Assessment, and then we'll get into what that means for my subject, Olivia. The test is a self-issued questionnaire that assigns 4 letters signifying a personality type. It was created by Catherine Briggs and Elizabeth Briggs Myers, and it's widespread and popular because it's so easy to access. I mean, all you got to do is type in 16 personalities test into a website and you'll get the Myers-Briggs. The letters operate on a binary system, the first letter being either E or I for introversion or extroversion respectively, the second denoting S for sensing or N for intuitive, the third signifying T for thinking or F for feeling, and the fourth being J for judging or P for perceiving. This test has applications for a deeper analysis of the psyche, as well as a self-report questionnaire and psychometric indicator. It's being used in a lot of contexts, such as personnel development, career counseling, team building, interviewing, even federal contexts. The CIA has been using it since the 30s, so you know it's legit. Now, the Myers-Briggs has seen its fair share of controversy. People have been very critical of it because a lot of these things aren't a binary system. Like, how can you judge between judging and, perceiving? It seems like not a binary typically. Like, we can perceive and judge at the same time. And it also has no scientific basis, really. But I found that in my own life, the descriptions have been very accurate in the representation of your personality. And the questions are pretty in-depth and challenge their subjects. So I think that's pretty interesting. Here's a little excerpt on the results of Olivia Glidden as an ENFJ. ENFJ is subtitled The Protagonist, and protagonists feel called to serve a greater purpose in life. Thoughtful and idealistic, ENFJs strive to have a positive impact on other people and the world around them. These personalities rarely shy away from an opportunity to do the right thing, even when doing so is far from easy. I think this description fits my subject because for a couple of reasons. One, Livy displays a strong sense of morality. Livy feels right and wrong, not in like a traditional rules-bound sense, but more in an order sense. She feels that the world should be a certain way, and when it's not that way, when it turns out to be another way, she gets frustrated. And this is from the website. ENFJs are motivated by a sincere wish to do the right thing. These also lead into the trait of leadership. And I believe that Livy has a strong sense of leadership as well. On the soccer field, in all her jobs, and at the church, Livy has always been a leader. This is a quote from the website. Determined and inspiring, ENFJs often find their way into leadership roles, end quote. Both these traits, her morality and her leadership, lead her to a rhythm of sacrifice. Livy sacrificially gives, loves, and abnegates. And these result in her loving people and being active in her community, and her displaying a lot of friendship tendencies and qualities. And overall, that's part of the protagonist's skill set as well. I believe she lives up to her Myers-Briggs typing of ENFJ by displaying leadership, sacrifice, and morality, which are hallmarks of a typical protagonist. Okay, finally, we're going to get into the 3 qualities that I interviewed Livy on and got her thoughts on, as well as researched based on my 3 personality theorists, and we're going to see how they measure up. The first one is personnel development. And I covered this in the interview, and it's defined generally as a quality of growth and self-improvement. So Rogers cited personal development as psychological maturity, being able to tackle difficult problems, standing in the way between one's current self and the self that can be. And this is all about this is all the becoming sense that Rogers really loved to think about. The self-actualization part, that's what I was trying to get at. Maslow believed that personal development is not inwardly motivated, but motivated by one's needs and the fulfillment of them by others or outside forces. So Maslow was pretty dependent on other people filling these roles of filling needs. And it makes the individual very dependent and very weak. And then grimly, Kelly's thinking states that the individual is not motivated by outward anything or inward by the sense to become, but by a sense of responsibility. We must pry what little meaning is given to us or face meaninglessness, which is pretty interesting. Olivia has a different take on all this. I'm responsible for the formation of my own personality, but also the influence of things around me influence my personality. The people I hang out with, the places I go, and the people I see. My older sister, Emily, was my closest friend growing up, and we spent the most time together. She made the most impact on my personality. So this opinion seems to combine Kelly's and Rogers' theories, and a little less dependent on others than Maslow emphasized. Now we're on to personal change. I want to highlight Rogers and Kelly's thinking on this topic. Rogers was all motivated by self, and so was Kelly, but Kelly was more asserts that motivation comes by meaning finding. And Rogers starts like this. If I can provide a certain type of relationship, the other will discover within himself the capacity to use that relationship for growth, and change and personal development will occur. And along the lines of humanistic psychology, Rogers keeps with the assertions that change occurs as a result of inside motivators, which may be triggered by psychiatry, deep relationships, or big watershed moments in the life of the subject. Kelly throws this intrinsic motivation because self is good argument out, stating, quote, the choices that men make are choices of their own acts, and the alternatives are distinguished by their own constructs, end quote. Olivia Glidden had this to say, well, I went on antidepressants and that changed my whole personality, and not in a good way. When I got my chronic illness, my personality went out the door. I have a condition, it's one of the most painful conditions, and it really took my sparkle away. I think finding God and realizing that I can't do it on my own, and that there's so much joy in my life, led to a watershed moment in my life. I was one person and I was changed into another, end quote. These theories don't line up with what Olivia was saying. It was more Olivia stating God's influence in her life instead of some outside motivator or some inward motivator. It was more of God coming into her life and changing things around. The last one I chose was emotion for our interview. I highlight Rogers, Kelly, and Maslow in this one. Rogers' general statement is that emotion is good and it can be a powerful motivator. Maslow expands on Rogers' theories. Emotion is necessary for positive reinforcement. And then Kelly asserts that you only need one emotion, and that's a sense of responsibility. Rogers accepts emotion in his theory. Emotion is a powerful force in the process of self-actualization. Success is associated with strong emotions such as joy and love towards oneself and others. This is the location of a major split between Rogers and Kelly's theories, because the only emotion present in Kelly's brutal cognitivity is responsibility. The emotion of feeling responsible leads to a different self-actualization, driven by cold individual pursuit for meaning. Maslow majors on emotion, especially strength in handling emotions. He calls this emotional intelligence. Positive reinforcement takes maturity from the parties initiating. Olivia had this to say, I try not to let my emotions impact my personality, but I think that me being happy a lot of the time makes me very energetic and a joyful person, and that makes me bubbly and want to talk to everyone, and make friends with everyone, and make everyone else happy. My emotions aren't always true, and I let my mind wander into things. When I get scared or anxious about things, I don't want to become an anxious person. I try not to let my emotions impact my decision making. This is on brand for Olivia, as she cited God's impact on her life in the personal change section. Just because in biblical Christianity, there's a common theme that emotions can be manipulated and emotions can lie to us, and we need to constantly be searching for the truth. And this is pretty online with Kelly's cognitive theory, but it's more hopeful and more joyful that someday we'll be in a better place and that there is intrinsic meaning in the universe. Alright, I have a couple conclusions. Humanism and cognitive personality theories both have the same goal, to become more than oneself. This is displayed by both theories very differently. Humanism relies on the goodness of self or others to support in reaching the higher form of self. Cognitive theory asserts that no one can save you but yourself. The pursuit in becoming higher starts and ends with prying meaning from the jaws of the meaningless universe, applying what each of us finds to our being. These theories are limited by ourselves. A biblical Christian perspective states that the pursuit to be greater is given to us by God, and that He desires that we be as close to Him as we can be. The pressure to pry meaning from the meaningless, or the weight of humanity being intrinsically good, is lifted by this notion. Olivia put it this way: finding God and realizing that I can't do it on my own, and that there's so much joy in my life, led to the watershed moment in my life. I was one person and I was changed to another. These are a sample of my questions used and my 3 works cited from Kelly, Maslow, and Rogers. If you want to take a look at this, that'd be awesome. Those were the questions that I asked in my interview that I derived most of my answers for this PowerPoint. And in the interview, I asked other questions on the topics of motivation and relationships. So please check out the podcast that I have linked in the Dropbox. Thank you so much and have a fantastic rest of your year.